All right, happy engineer, welcome back. You're going to be glad you're here today. And Christopher, we have been dancing all around making this happen for far too long. Welcome to the show. Thanks for being here, man.
Thank you, Zach. Really excited to be here. Really excited to talk to everyone.
Yeah. Why don't we do something I don't often do and just have a 2 minute drill summary of your career path? You've had a really interesting set of experiences. And before we deep dive into some of those points of genius for you, I'd love it if you could just share the arc of your engineering career and growth in 2 minutes or less. You think you can handle that?
It's going to be a tough one, but I'm going to go for
Make it
it.
happen. Give
Absolutely.
us the quick high level. Where has the world of engineering taken you?
I studied electrical engineering at Virginia Tech, and out of school in 2009, I went and I worked at an architecture and engineering firm and really loved the people there. But, I was looking to get more diversified experience. So I moved to the heavy steel industry and I was doing controls engineering, got really heavy into systems, integrated systems, more printed circuit board side, more in understanding drives and just how different systems work together. And it was a great experience. Then from there, I started working in a power protection business in Richmond, Virginia that was acquired by ABB. I really found a home in power electronics. I really loved the product development side of things. So I got heavy into research and development. I got heavy into compliance and regulatory matters, project management. And then before you
Wow.
know
Yeah.
it, they were asking me to do project management and then people management. And then I had to flip from being the expert, the guy who like knew like all the stuff, to leading this group of people. And that was really challenging for me because I thought like I had to be the guy. And then I realized
Yeah. Yeah.
that's not my role. And then I started leading people. I did that for 9 years at ABB. And then I started at a startup at the beginning of this year as their CTO. And I've been raising a group there now. And it's been fantastic. People leadership is where my career has led me.
Well done. You
Two
nailed it.
minutes on the dot.
Probably less. I wasn't keeping track, but it's perfect. What I love about your experience, and it resonates with a lot of things I've done, that is really broad from the shop floor, manufacturing, what's happening on the ground, so to speak, day to day, the R&D, the product development, that whole side, everything in between. You kind of seen that whole picture,
Hmm.
but it's hard to ignore that pivotal point you highlighted, the day that we're no longer here in the organization because of our technical genius, but
Hmm.
to lead the other technical geniuses. That's a tough transition. And it's
Hmm.
a place I'd love to zoom in. So take us back leading up to that first manager position.
Hmm.
What were you doing right before that? And was it something you wanted? Is it something you asked for? Was it a reward for great work? Tell us a little bit about what led into that first manager job.
I was leading a multinational project I had a team in the US and a team in Switzerland, and we were bringing this commercial UPS product here to the US for the first time, and it was really exciting. All my leadership was so excited about the communication, how well I was doing with communication and getting the two teams to work together. And there were talks about like we're growing as a business, so we need to grow the research and development team. So, when we're done with this, Chris, we want to put you in charge of all the electrical engineers. And I was like, oh, that's so exciting and so fantastic. And so we did that shortly, like a month after we finished the project. Like made that transition, and then 4 months later, I took on all the mechanical engineers, and then a year later, I took on all the software engineers. And before you
Wow.
know it, like I had like this huge group reporting to me, and that was a problem because I didn't have enough time for everybody. And like people were stressed out and they felt like I was micromanaging them, but they could never talk to me. And um,
Mm,
so that was
mm,
really hard for me.
yeah. How many people at the beginning and then over that year that followed? Tell us about the size of your team and how many were directs at that time.
After I took over the electrical team, I had 6 people, very manageable. And
Reasonable team. Yeah.
yeah, and then I took on the mechanicals, and so I was up to 13 people. And then over the next, year, once I had the software team, I had a team in Richmond and a team in Bangalore, India. And so by the end of that, I was at 22 people.
All direct.
And yeah,
Wow. Okay.
And so the team in India had a supervisor there, but they weren't in like what's our product development roadmap look like and timelines or anything like that. They were there for administrative purposes, which is helpful. But it's like you got two different time zones. You got to
Yeah.
cater to
Yeah.
people, and
Totally.
it was terrible. And then by that time, I realized I'm not getting support to have team managers, so I'm going to put in acting team managers. I put in place without permission, without asking.
Oh, wow.
I put in acting leaders for each of the disciplines that we had. And because we had lab teams as well, we had 5 different teams basically that we split it out to. And
Mm.
I had team leaders for all of those teams. And then within another year, we actually had official team managers. And so I went down to 7 people. And by the time I left, there were 45 people in our department.
Wow. So, Christopher, the common story of engineering leaders I coach is the superstar individual contributor gets recognized by a senior person for their capability and communication skills and people acumen. They're doing a great job delivering the work. To your point, global team, and you're this all-star, maybe the hub at the center of many functions, but you're an IC, and you get rewarded by promotion to manager.
Mm-hmm.
And it cripples so many engineers.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us, in your journey, you described like that was a hard transition for me. What were the brick walls that you ran into, the things that happened in that time where you realized my IC mindset and skill set isn't going to work here? What were those things for you?
What that looked like, I'll give you like a really stark example. When I was going to go out of the office, I would have to meet with everybody. We would have a meeting and I would lay out every day for all the technicians. This is exactly what they're working on, what day, what time, what engineer to get with. I would go to each of the engineers working on different projects and have them walk me through what they were going to be working on. And by the end of it, it's like, okay, we've got a game plan. And that stressed everybody out, including me.
Yeah.
Because like it was a massive amount of work. And by the time like that week would actually come, more than half of those things couldn't actually happen in practicality. Like just because we're in R&D, but we're also supporting a production environment as well. So I'd have teams that are doing design work and then teams that are doing production support. And so it's like, yeah, like you got to get revenue out the door as well. So you kind of have to respond to that. So that was an example. Everybody had to ask me for time off. Everybody. I had a process where it's like, well, send me an email and, I want your last name, the dates, and is it vacation or, what is it for type of thing. And like, I'd get people like, hey, you never responded to my vacation request. Well, it's because I was getting 600 emails like a day from like every angle. And it's like, you look in my inbox and I've got like over 4,000 unread emails. And it's like, well, yeah, I'm doing a really poor job. I'm sorry. Yeah, let me go take a look at that. I didn't have enough time to sit in on a project meeting. And then I'd be like 2 meetings later, someone would be presenting something they're super excited about. And I'm like, yeah, you can't do that. And it's like that won't work. And here's why. And then they're frustrated because I didn't have the time to give them that counsel before they spent like 40 hours on it.
Wow. Yeah.
And I also shouldn't have to at the same time. Like I realized like you're the bottleneck here. Like all of these things, it's you. A couple of employees started complaining to HR. They started saying like, I'm really dissatisfied. I'm feeling really stressed out. I don't have time to talk to my manager and I don't feel supported. And so I had to get that feedback. And that was really hard for me.
Yeah.
Here I was thinking everything's amazing. I'm stressed out beyond belief, but like we're doing great. And then I got that feedback and it was a gut punch.
I was going to ask what you were feeling during that time. So the stress was real. What were the hours? Were you putting in crazy hours to try to keep up with it all?
Sometimes 65, 70 hours. I'd get up sometimes early in the morning, 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'd start work. I would work the whole day. I'd go to work. I wouldn't get home until 7:30. Even when I wasn't working, I was thinking about work. On the weekends, like I would be like, oh, this came up, I'm sending this email, or I'm going to crank out this spec that we need to start
Yeah.
working on this
Yeah.
project in the next 2 weeks type of thing. I thunk myself into work because I thought that that's what I needed to do.
Yeah. That's the job. That's what I'm should do. Christopher, did you have a narrative going on in your mind at that time that justified the hours, that it was the right thing to do? You were happy to do it even, or were you burning out and just really kind of hated that experience while it was happening? Do you remember kind of in the moment, what was the story you were telling yourself about the stress and the hours and the everything going on?
At the beginning, when I started being a people leader, I told myself it was so exciting. It was new, there's so much opportunity. And I told myself, yeah, this is just what you need to do right now. And then when I was getting closer to the end of it, I felt like, well, I did it because I thought it was for a time, but this doesn't feel like it's for a time. It feels like it will continue to be the same all the time. And nobody's asked me to do it. And so I was feeling a bit resentful
Yeah.
and just burnt out. Somebody else want to come in and do this? By all means.
Oh, so many things to unpack, but I'd like to get to the turnaround point. Where's the place it began to change? Was it getting that feedback via HR? People don't like working for you, Christopher. You got that feedback. And like,
Yeah.
where was that point and what actually created the upward shift for you?
Yeah, it was when I got that feedback and it happened overnight. I was surprised. I did not expect it. Maybe I had my head buried in the sand and I should have seen the writing on the wall. I don't know. But I felt a little defensive at
Yeah,
first.
sure.
And then I like realized like, well, this is how they feel. And feelings are feelings. And you shouldn't make that right or wrong, but take it as feedback. So what are you going to do with the feedback?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to keep doing the same thing. You're going to run, or are you going to make a conscious decision to make a change? So I made a conscious decision to make a change. So overnight, I created a new policy around how time off was being requested. I made a new policy around purchase requisitions and approval limits and who got to do them instead of me approving everything from a 19-cent part to $30,000 transformer.
Yep.
So I put in something there. And then I put the acting team leaders in place and I put time into them. I gave them like, this is what I would like you to be doing with the disciplines. And I'm going to meet with you guys on a consistent basis and we're going to have touch points and you're going to give me feedback.
Wow.
I'm going to give you feedback. I've been obviously getting leadership development, but I asked to get professional coaching. And
Awesome.
so at that point, I started doing professional coaching. I started doing some AMA programs around management, primarily around leadership and around communication. I knew that it was an area that I could improve in.
So
and
good.
I started moving from being the manager to the leader. I never once after that defined someone's schedule of what they were working on. Not once after that.
How long from that point of feedback to a completely different operating system and experience on that team, how long did that turnaround take, would you say?
It was about 2 months.
Yeah.
I mean,
love that.
the
I love
morale,
that.
the morale turned around within like a week. But I felt like not everybody knew how to do it. They were like repeating the old ways. And so it was the habit, getting people back in the habit of like, yep, that's great. And I need you to go to this person now.
Sure.
They'll be able to comment on that officially. So it was getting people back into a new routine, into a new habit. But within 2 months, the morale of the team was up and I had everybody bought in on this operating model. And were things perfect? No. I mean, but we would find the challenges or the opportunities. Sometimes it was a person. Sometimes it was a way that we were doing things. And we would figure out like, how do we make this that much better? It's okay. It failed. Let's figure out what to do differently.
Yeah.
And then I started moving into, I could take those team managers and I could work them through a different leadership model. I'm coaching them, but okay, coaching's not working. So I'm going to demonstrate, I'm going to instruct them on how to deal with this difficult conversation. They're going to be a part of it with me. And then afterwards, we're going to debrief about it, Matt. What did you experience in that conversation? And what do you think was different about that? And what do you think you would do differently next time?
So good. You made a comment I reached out to my leadership and asked for the professional coaching
Hmm.
because of the awareness that came from that gut punch of candid, honest feedback. But at the beginning, that wasn't there. And I'm assuming your boss and the senior leadership team of the company was not coming alongside you, coaching you, mentoring you, sharing with you all these things. If anything, maybe they were absent or modeling a similar crazy work ethic. I'm wondering if that's true. Tell me, what was it like as far as the support or lack of, not to throw anyone under the bus, but just kind of being honest. What did you experience from leaders above you when you took on that manager role?
The individual that hired me really was a great manager and supported me. And when things would get bad, we would have some small coaching things and more like advice giving. I always appreciated that. And ABB is a big company. They have like a management development program, a middle management program, and I got nominated to be in those
Okay.
programs.
Okay.
So I
Yep.
did I did get those, but in terms of the other development, it wasn't coming from somebody else to tell
Yeah.
me you're going to do this. It was, oh, I need to figure out what I need. What's my gap? What's my learning opportunity? What's my growth need to be here? Because I immediately recognized I feel like coaching would be really instrumental in my growth. And it was instrumental not only in my professional growth, but in my personal growth as well.
Yeah, it's amazing. One thing that I hear people say, but I think a lot of people don't believe really fully because their actions don't reflect it, is this reality that you can create the kind of experience in your career that you described post this feedback, where you have a reasonable schedule and a balanced life and a team that's really high performing and engaged, and you're not working 70 hours a week and these things. But sometimes above us, what we see modeled is something that we don't want. And then we look at
Mm-hmm.
our own experience and we're not happy even where we are right now. And people kind of write that off of just how it is.
Mm-hmm.
This is it. And they don't lean into the idea that no, I can take responsibility for this and go get that support and go get that training, go get that coaching, go get that feedback. And it's possible. And so I'm excited that you're a great example of somebody who, it's not like the company came alongside and gave you every single thing you needed proactively to make this happen. Like, you had to learn through some hard mistakes, but
Mm-hmm.
demonstrated what that turnaround looks like. So if we could go back now, the Christopher
Mm-hmm.
who's led big teams to extreme performance and is now CTO, growing an organization at this level, looking back, what would you say are the most important shifts that need to happen as a manager, and then becoming a true leader within that? We could talk about the difference, but going from that IC to manager, that jump that's so hard for so many engineers to make, what are the
Mm-hmm.
keys to success in your lens, looking back on your own journey?
The success becomes the people and not you. And so I, for a long time, thought that I need to be on top of my game 1,000%. And so I like using this. I'm gonna steal this because it's great, but it's stuck with me for a long time. If you think of your capacity as a spinning plate, if I put 100% of my time into spinning my plate, then I get 100% out of it. If I've got 5 team members and I can put 20% into each of them, and I can get maybe 75%, which is, about the capacity you're going to get from people is 75, 80%. If you're shooting for more, it's not a good idea. But if I do that, that's a lot more than 100% out of my plate. 5 people at 75% is a lot more than 100% of my plate. So think about your resources as spinning plates. The time you put into them is the time that you're going to get out from them. And that isn't in telling them what to do. That is in asking questions and being observant and hearing what their thoughts are and their challenges, to understanding where they are in that day. Like, what everybody's human. So what do they have that's going on? Because sometimes those are the barriers to success.
Mm-hmm.
And another really important lesson is when someone comes to you with a problem, think about it as a monkey that's on their back. And if you take that monkey from them, because it's now your problem, the more monkeys you take, the more burdens you become. So when someone comes into your office with a problem, try to reinforce people not coming with problems, but also coming with ideas for solutions. And the best thing you can do is make sure that monkey stays on their back. Even if you're just giving them guidance, that problem isn't something you're taking an action on. You do that very infrequently,
Yeah.
as much as you possibly can.
The point of listening to what's going on in someone's life, a lot of engineers, that's a bit uncomfortable. It's a bit out of our norm, very analytical, live in the IQ more than the EQ. There's a head of engineering I'm working with right now. I'll name him John Doe just to respect confidentiality. But in brief, he's got a conflict with the CIO at the organization he works in. And we were talking about what's going on and said, well, hey, really quick, before we worry about the solution, describe to me the vision of what a successful relationship here would look like. How do you want this problem to go? Because trust had been broken, a sense of loyalty had been broken. This person was wanting to just leave the company. Like, I don't even want to deal with this individual. And, I'm working with this head of engineering, but imagining if that CIO would just do what you said and have a real conversation and become aware that their actions had broken trust with this really high performing, extremely critical team member inside their company who's driving a significant portion of value and revenue into the organization. Like, the CIO is completely unaware because they're just operating in their IQ. And fortunately, the head of engineering has the wherewithal to get a coach and do the work for himself to make sure this is resolved. But there's so many times where the problem is not the problem. Right? It's like the underneath layers where the work needs to happen in the relationship and in the emotions of things. And so how does an engineering manager who's new to this build that muscle? How do we get to the place where we stop just seeing the technology and the problems on the surface, but we have the courage and the confidence to go have that deeper conversation?
Yeah, well, practice. The thing I'll say is when something feels uncomfortable and our tendency is to want to avoid it, that is an indicator light. And that indicator light is that's the growth edge. And even though you fear it, it's good to take a plunge over the edge. Now, that doesn't mean that you should go in blind, but you should go in with a little bit of tactic. I like think about it with enter the situation with curiosity. So let's say you've got a project that's going on and you're behind on the timeline and you got a project leader that's saying, I can't get team buy-in. We just don't have commitment there. And my question would be why? And what's going on? And by the time you figure out that you've got people that feel undervalued, I feel like 3 steps before them, things got off timeline and now they had extra time, but now I don't have extra time because we have all this pressure and that's unfair. And I feel stressed out about that. And I don't understand why we didn't plan better. And I don't understand why I always go back to, when people got beef. So let's get the beef out. Let's grill it up. Let's figure out what everybody needs to get out their chest. And then let's refocus back in on a plan of attack. Do we need to pull more people in? Do we need to plan for work on this weekend? I'm going to be the first person to say, I want to avoid that. I want to avoid people having to work extra hours and work the weekend. But when things get critical and we're behind, then we got to come together as a team. So let's solve this. If that means I'm coming in, I'm coming in. Sometimes that means I'm going to pick up the wrench. I'm going to put this thing together with you. It's about just remembering that we're all people. And that means we have feelings, regardless of being an engineer or not. Yeah. We're not always great at being able to communicate those. Something could be coming up for me right now. And the way I'm talking to you could be greatly affected by that. Or my willingness to be agreeable could be greatly affected. So sometimes that's a group conversation. Sometimes that's a one-on-one conversation. You have to understand like where is the pain point. And that might be coming and sitting down and be like, hey, I'm sensing some frustration right now. Is everything okay? Could you tell me a little bit about what's going on? With whatever you're willing to share.
That word conversation, gets a highlight and a double underline for me in that answer. And as a coach, and I know doing coaching as well, the power of transformation begins with a conversation. if we're not willing to mention it, then we have no ability to manage it. And so that openness, the courage to just, I love how you describe the picture. Get the beef out and let's grill it. That's a perfect way. It's, hey, you know what? I don't know. This is raw. It's ugly. It's bloody. It's messy. But let's just throw it on the grill together and stand here and watch it cook and see what happens here. I think that's a really useful metaphor. Just say, hey, look, get the beef out, throw it on the grill.
I've got some people that would be, no, I don't want to do that. No, I don't think that's a good idea. No, this is the problem. It's kind of like, I'm hearing a lot of no's, and I don't care what we do, but I can tell you that no is not an option. So whatever you need to do and say, that's fine. Do that. And I'm also looking for ideas. So yeah. I'm not going to force you to do anything. Mm-hmm. However, no is not an option.
Mm-hmm. A good use of and as well. It's not but. It's exactly. The yes and. It's the yes and. Christopher, you're really good now, through the process and the experience you've had, when it comes to the systems and the ways to manage that become routine and habitual to set up the team for success. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering if you could uncover what are one or two of those management systems that free you up to start being the leader more so than being buried in management tasks all the time. What are the couple of pieces that you think are most important?
When you're doing product development, you usually want to track what your expenses are for outlays, anything that's material, and then you want to track hours. I recognize that tracking people's hours to a T is not always that effective, but you want to get a sense of what your spend is going on in a program. So you need to set up a management system for that. You've got someone in charge of that project, and then you have disciplines that, for me, that I've got people that are in charge of disciplines and then people that are in charge of projects, and they have regular communications about what people are doing, what forecasting ahead. This project manager's talking about, I need these resources for the next week. And it's a conversation about not exactly what they're working on, but how people are allocated, because people are a spend that you have in your business, right? So there's that. And so you've got a management system around people and expense tracking right there. And then the other really important thing to me is taking finance and HR topics super seriously. So anything going on in your department, in your team, whatever, around finance and around HR. So finance every month.
That's good.
I'm balancing the department ledger at the end of the month. I'm looking at what we spent, where, and I'm asking questions back to those project managers and to the the discipline team managers if I have any questions. I got so good at it, it takes me an hour, not a big deal. And if you've got a controller coming in asking you questions, you can be able to help explain that, because it's going to hit the P&L at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And HR topics. So keeping up with the discipline managers and understanding how's everybody doing in the team. Do we have anybody that we're having any issues with? How are those conversations going? Being able to know if now it needs to become like an HR conversation, because those are really, really important.
Yep.
Those are the two things.
Those are great. That's really good. The HR piece, I know lots of engineers don't want to hear that. I really agree. I've got an amazing engineering manager in automotive that I'm supporting right now because he has a team member who's underperforming, has been for a long time, and he's just at his wit's end and how to deal with it. And we went through some early coaching sessions around the issue, and eventually just became clear that no HR conversation had happened yet. It's like, well, hold on a second. Wait, you've done all these things and you haven't even mentioned this to HR yet? No. Okay, your next conversation, you need a one-on-one with your HR generalist to go talk about what we need to do here, your business partner. And if a PIP needs to start, it needs to start sooner than later, because these processes take a long time. And especially in a big automotive company, you're not going to just be able to fire somebody tomorrow. This is a really complex process. And he's just new to it, new manager. It's the same thing we talked about earlier. There's no coach, there's no person coming along saying, hey, here's what to do, here's how to handle this, et cetera. And didn't realize he could be 6 to 12 months away from any reasonable action being taken. And he's dealing with a low performer that whole time. And that's a big drag on the team. So don't delay.
And to your point, Zach, like I didn't have someone that told me that. I didn't have anyone that said like, yeah, when you're having these issues, you need to pull in HR. I had to learn the hard way.
Yeah.
And so if there's anything anyone takes from this, when you start running into something where maybe you've got a really high performer that's on your team. Like a lot of times people think high performer means there aren't going to be any problems. My experience typically is that high performers are either they're not a big problem or they're a really big problem. That's my experience. I don't mean that in a drastic way. I just mean like the attention and the approach may need to be a little different. I never have found a one size fits all for people. Everybody's different. You're going to have people that are more introverted, people that are more extroverted, people that are more analytical, people that are more expressive, and they need different things. But when you get to a point where you feel like something's not clicking or you feel like direction's not being followed, that's when you start to have a conversation with HR and they know this better that they'll ask you questions. And you may find, okay, this really isn't that big a deal right now.
Yep.
And then sometimes you might be like, oh, I've just been ignoring things. But the worst thing that can happen for you and for an employee is that you wait 6 months for something
Exactly.
that should have been addressed before. Because
Exactly.
I've had mixed experiences. I've had people that go on PIPs that turn it around 1,000%. And it's what they needed to just turn things around. And then I've had people that it just got worse.
Yep. Yeah, they check out completely.
Yeah.
Great point about high performers too. The idea that sometimes, and I like how you just, it's not problem like they stop performing at a high level. It's problem in the
Right.
sense that they demand a certain level of attention and
Yeah.
care to really feel that sense of significance and that their achievement is being seen and recognized.
Right.
Sometimes there's a little bit of drama or ego around like, hey, I am a high performer. I just need you to tell me that a few times. And
Right. Exactly. Well, and another thing to be careful of is when you have high performers, your tendency is going to be to give them more work. And you got to be careful about that because that can cause high burnout or dissatisfaction in high
totally.
performers as well.
If we go back to the beginning stages of you as a manager and you were putting in the crazy hours, getting up at
Hmm.
4 a.m., getting to work, putting in 12, 13, 14-hour days, and that story you told yourself that, well, this is temporary. I just need to do this right now because I'm a new manager.
Hmm.
I think that's a really dangerous trap that
Hmm.
lots of people face, even not at these big leaps from IC to manager or maybe manager to executive, director or executive. Sometimes those like, hey, this is big, this is new, it can trigger that. Even just from company to company, I'm an IC here and I get a new role, IC somewhere else, and it's my first 90 days. And we tell ourselves this story that, well, just temporarily, I need to put in all this extra work to fill in the blank, get up to
Hmm.
speed, hit the ground running, prove myself to somebody, whatever it is. So I'd love to hear your perspective. Is there some truth to that we should expect, or it's reasonable to expect putting in 20%, 30% extra effort to get something up to speed quickly, and that's a good idea? Is that a complete mindset trap that it actually never needs to happen? You could be doing a reasonable work schedule the whole time if you just had the tools and the mindset to do it. What do you see as the looking back, what's true or untrue about that story?
I don't think I could prescribe one particular thing because I think it also depends on where's your organization? Where was it coming from and where is it
Yeah,
moving
fair.
to?
Okay.
Because if you're moving into growth as an organization, that could look a little different. But if you've got, in general, I would say when I started out, I wasn't focusing on the right things.
Yeah.
And because of that, I couldn't put the processes and the procedures in place. And if I had focused on putting the processes and procedures in place, I wouldn't really need to
Never would
have
have had to
done
happen.
a lot of that extra work.
Yeah, that's good.
It's a hard truth to say, but unless you're being forced to do the job, which I hope not, and no one is doing, because, I'm a proponent of do what you love and know what your purpose is and follow that. But short of that, I think everybody gets very excited about this new and fun opportunity. Like things couldn't be looking better for me and in my career right now. So I think it's hard to scale that back, but I would promote the theory that you don't actually have to make it successful because
Yeah.
There will always be the next thing to do. There is no shortage of it. And if you get to the point in your career, which I have, by the way, not in my current job, but previously, if you get to the point where nothing needs your attention and nobody needs your support, you've done your job to the best ability you possibly could. That should be your goal, that you've
Love
made
that.
yourself superfluous. That's
Yep.
exactly what you should shoot for.
I agree 1,000%. And as counterintuitive as that feels, it is the fastest way to growth because now the door is open for you to move up and create bigger impact. And as long as there's anchors and tethers that you're required at the lower level to do that job, that's one more reason why not to promote you.
Exactly.
So 1,000%. I love that. I think the danger of buying in to the story that this is temporary is that while you're believing that story, meanwhile, you're conditioning your nervous system to this is what's normal.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't change the story until you burn out.
Mm-hmm.
Some external, really dramatic force has to happen, or the feedback comes from HR. I think we over index on our consciousness and ability to drive our life, that I'm making every decision all the time. And the truth is you're actually quite on autopilot. You're subconscious, and so much of your life is just happening through conditioning and habits. Mm-hmm. And so if you go 90 days, 6 months, 12 months, working 60 and 70 hours a week, guess what? You're conditioning your whole nervous system to that is normal. So you can tell yourself it's temporary as long as you want, but you're actually setting yourself up for that to be the norm the whole time. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's so small a shift. Developing a new habit does not take very long. It can be developed in 8 weeks, unfortunately. So I would look at it as sometimes it's necessary, but I would never make it an open loop thing. Do not say the job just requires this of me right now and not have an end.
Yeah.
So if you're going to do it, maybe you lost someone on the team, and maybe you also got to do moonlight a little as an IC here and there. Like, I get that. But the thing is, you have to know that you aren't abandoning yourself in the process, because you are no good to the entire team if you are stressed out, overwhelmed, tired. Like, you're going to do less work. Focus on quality work, not quantity work.
Mm-hmm.
That would be my advice. I think if I could go back and do it again, where I sit now, I wouldn't do the extra. I would put in the amount of time that I should in a day and go home, take care of myself, take care of my family, and go back the next day.
Amen. Great point. Don't leave an open loop. Another awesome reason to have a professional coach in your life that you can set that accountability with. Okay, for the next 4 weeks, I'm going to put in the extra time, and then we have a session. We're going to check in. How's that going? And renew a commitment to whatever the next best action is at some point. Really helpful. Mm-hmm. Okay, last thing. There's 100 things I want to ask you, but here's one. Your perspective, really, I'm curious about now that you've gone through and are leading as a CTO in this organization. If one of your managers came to you and said, hey, Christopher, I'm getting buried. I'm overwhelmed. There's so much going on. It's forcing me to put in these long hours. I heard you on the podcast that I don't need to be doing that. But I don't know what the critical few things are separating from the trivial many. Like, I just can't seem to answer that question of what's most important, what to say yes to, what to say no to. It all feels important. I'm just buried in this rat race of executing what's right in front of me, and I can't see signal from noise right now. What would you coach someone to do to help create better clarity on what's actually important for them as a manager?
So the first thing I would do is I would not give them an answer to their question. So when they're coming to you with their problem. And so that's the monkey that's on the back. And so what I'd want to do is keep that monkey there. And I would challenge them by saying, I don't think that's true. I actually think you do know. And I think that you're worried that by saying no, that you're going to disappoint someone, or that you're going to feel like you're going to drop the ball because you feel like you should be able to do everything. So what I'd like you to do is, on the whiteboard, list out all those things and I want you to do a 1, 2, and 3. Decide the high priority gets 1, mid priority gets 2, low priority gets 3. And I've done this exercise before.
Yes.
And by the end of it, you realize like there's really only one high priority, usually. So my
So good.
exercise would be in reflecting back. I hear you saying that there's so much to do and you're feeling stressed out and overwhelmed and you don't know what to focus on. And I actually think you do. And you should give yourself a little bit of a breathing room and challenge yourself to walk through those steps. And so let's do that together this time. And then the next time, my goal would be that you can do that on your own. And we're only coming here in the case that you can't come to a conclusion on something. And that's happened too, where it's like, these are both high priorities. Like, that's a great point. Which one do you think needs to be the tiebreaker here?
Sure.
And it's like, okay,
so
that's
good.
fair.
That's brilliant. The coach in me just glowing with happiness about this answer. Just helping people to trust themselves, to believe in themselves. And I often tell the people who work with us at the Oasis of Courage, one of the most impactful things you can do for someone else is believe in them more than they believe in themselves.
Absolutely.
And in that moment, that's exactly what's happening, right?
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. And I think that's the culture you want in a team is you want people to know you believe in them. It's not because they're nice or because they dress well or they're on time or any of those things. It's a culmination of who they are as a being and that you value them and they see how much trust you put in them and how much you believe in them. Because once they have that, that is a spark and it will spread. It will spread like wildfire throughout the team.
Now we're into what leadership looks like and not just managing. Brilliant. Christopher, if somebody would love to connect with you, understand more about your journey, maybe reach out with a question or two, or learn what you're up to at your new startup, what's the best way for somebody to reach out and connect?
They can just contact me on my cell phone. They can send me a text if they feel, comfortable shooting a text. It's 804-869-9578. Just tell me your name and what question you have, and I'll get back to you. And if you want to talk on the phone, you just let me know and I'll talk on the phone.
That's a remarkably generous offer. So Happy Engineer, if you have heard something that inspired you today and you have a question you want to engage with Christopher, we'll put that phone number in the show notes. Send him a note. And thank you for that. I'm amazed. I love it. That is so great. I'm so excited to hear where you take this last piece. I always end in the same way, Christopher, and you'll appreciate this as an engineering leader and as a coach yourself, that in life, in coaching and engineering, questions lead, answers follow. And we're all looking for better answers, more money, more happiness, more engagement and fulfillment in our career, all the things we want. So we need to ask better questions. What would be the question you would lead the Happy Engineer with coming out of this conversation today?
The question that I would normally ask, regardless, is what's your purpose in life?
What is your purpose in life? Happy Engineer, sit with that, be with that. And if you're stuck, send Christopher a text. What a joy. Thank you for being here again. Christopher, I just want to acknowledge you, your passion to help leaders and managers to overcome these challenges, the way you give back, to the OACO community and the Happy Engineers, but your teams, and as a CTO now, I'm sure your teams are blessed to have a leader like you in the organization. Just thank you for the work you do and the generosity you brought today and continue to in this industry. It's amazing.
Absolutely. Thanks for inviting me. I'm happy to be here.